Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in again to another episode here at amazic.com, where we talk about all things cloud native. And if you like this talk, I want to encourage you to visit amazic.com and listen to all of our other episodes that we've been doing. We've put up a lot of them this past year. There's also articles, there's news coverage, there's event coverage stuff from the KubeCon that just happened last week. So if you're into this stuff, definitely head over to amazic.com and you'll get a lot more. And with that, I want to introduce our guest for today. He's Rich Bentley, who is the VP of Product Marketing at StormForge. Rich, it's great to have you with us. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Twain. Great to be here.
All right. So, Rich, just wanted to start talking about just your background leading up to StormForge, what you've been up to, and some of the important things that you've done in your career along the way.
Yeah, sure. So I joined StormForge a little over 2 years ago to lead up product marketing. And before that, kind of going back to the beginning of my career, I started out actually as a software developer. Probably the first 9 or so years out of college, I did software development, a lot of like plant floor IT systems and things like that. And then I went back to school, got my MBA, and that's when I kind of made the move into marketing. And really since then, for the last, 20, 25 years or so, I've been doing product marketing in, for a bunch of different software companies, all kind of in the back-end IT infrastructure management space. Most recently, before I joined StormForge, was with Dynatrace, so in the APM and observability space.
Wow, neat. So you come with a lot of experience. Yeah, that's many years. I mean, in the tech space, that's a lot. 25
Yeah,
plus years.
I like to say that I was doing product marketing before product marketing there was really a name for it. So when I started out as a product marketer, it wasn't really a very well-defined role in the space. But yeah, I've been doing it for a while.
Which was the company that you say you spent the most time with, or you'd say kind of shaped your career the most?
Well, probably, Dynatrace. So Dynatrace has kind of a long and complicated history, but it sort of started out as CompuWare.
Okay.
And so I was with CompuWare for a few years, and then I left and did a few other things, and then I came back, and at the time I came back, it was Dynatrace. And I kind of saw Dynatrace through, some rapid growth, and we ended up doing an IPO. And so I'd say that experience is probably, one of the foundational experiences in my career.
All right. All right. Wow, that's great. Yeah. So how many years roughly, like from your first stint and your second stint in combination, how many years were you there?
Total, it was probably 8 or 9 years. Yeah.
All right. Neat, neat. So yeah, today at StormForge, you get to work closely with your customers. You get to see what they're going through with Kubernetes. And I would like to just start with just talking about that. What do you hear as you speak to customers? What are some of the challenges that you hear customers facing as they work with Kubernetes?
Yeah, so there's a lot of challenges, especially as they kind of scale up for day 2 operations within Kubernetes. It kind of starts out, you're sort of playing around with it and you're trying things out and you're launching apps. But then as you scale up, a lot of the challenges become really apparent. And it's, it kind of all goes back to the fact that Kubernetes is really complex. Like, it's really
Yeah.
powerful, but it's also very complex. It's like if
Hmm.
you want to go buy a cake, and Kubernetes gives you all the ingredients that you need that you could ever possibly want to make an outstanding cake, but you have to kind of put those pieces together on your own. And so what happens, because of that complexity, there's a few things that come up. One is that it's really hard to configure your applications to run efficiently. And that means like selecting the right CPU and memory requests and limits for your applications, the right application specific settings like JVM, heap size, garbage collection, all these different things that you can tune. There's so many different variables, and every combination of what you choose in those variables results in a different outcome, meaning the performance of the application, the resources used by the application, the cost to run the application, the reliability, and all of that. And so what organizations end up doing is they end up kind of guessing at the best way to configure their application. They may use default settings, or they may copy and paste from examples that they've seen online. But the end result is you end up, wasting a lot of resources. You end up allocating a lot of resources that don't end up getting used. Or on the flip side, you end up under allocating or under provisioning, and you end up with kind of performance or reliability issues at that point. And so again, where we see the challenges is, it's not necessarily that bad when you get started, but as you ramp up and you start to scale your operations, that can become really significant. Like, your cloud costs may start to grow, 40% year over year, and you may be wasting 50% or more of the resources that you end up allocating. So it becomes a significant, part of the cost of revenues for your company, and really becomes an unsustainable, way of managing your cloud applications.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting that you talk about how companies just sort of guess it, the size of instances, the resources being used. And I want to ask related to that. So, how do companies actually, once they scale, what are some of the pain points that they face that make them realize that this is getting out of hand? We need to get this under control. What are some of those warning signs that they typically see?
Yeah, it can come in a few different ways. So it can certainly come in the way of, just seeing cloud costs, right? You start to realize that your cloud costs are growing way more quickly than you thought that they might be growing. It could also come in the form of your engineers are spending a lot of time and effort on things like trying to, manually configure your Kubernetes applications, doing trial and error, deploying applications, seeing how it works, and then coming back and trying to tweak it. And so if your engineering team is spending, a lot of its time on kind of non-strategic activities, which definitely, configuring and tweaking and troubleshooting your Kubernetes settings would fall into that category. That's maybe not the best use of that time. The other thing would be, performance issues or reliability issues. If you're starting to see pods getting killed and things happening that are unexpected, that's another indication that maybe I'm not configured the right way with the way that I'm running my applications on Kubernetes.
All right. Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, those are some really good, warning signs that I'm sure many of our viewers themselves relate to when they think of their systems. And I want to ask, following up on that, about just, once they notice these warning signs and they want to take action, it's very likely that they probably take the wrong actions and may even make it worse. Uh, do you have any stories or examples to share on, on that front of what are some of the things that you shouldn't do when you're trying to fix these issues?
Yeah, it's a great point, and there are a lot of tools out there that are really trying to bring visibility and help show you that you have an issue. So on the one hand, you have observability tools like Dynatrace or Datadog or Prometheus or others that are kind of showing you performance of the application and how things are running and where there might be issues going on there. And then you've got a whole new set of kind of cloud cost management tools that are looking at more of the cost of the application and trying to give you visibility from that standpoint as well. So those tools, do a good job of kind of surfacing the visibility and showing you where there might be opportunities or where there might be problems. But what they don't do is tell you what to do about those problems or those opportunities. And so that's where we come in, because it's not always obvious or intuitive, what the right action is to take to become more efficient or to fix a performance problem or things like that. And we've seen a lot of examples where, if you're working just based on your intuition or based on your experience, you might think that this is the problem, that this particular component is what's causing the issue or what's causing my cost overruns or whatever. But we find over and over again that things are not always intuitive, and that's why the approach that we take with our machine learning, it's very much a science-based approach. So we're looking at the data, we're analyzing the data, and we're coming back with very specific recommendations on what you can do and how you can improve the efficiency of your application and the performance of the application. And it's based on science and data. And so it really helps organizations to kind of, hone in on exactly what actions can I take, what changes can I make to really improve the way that my application is running in production.
All right. Wow. I think that's a good point you made about how it's not just more information, but it's about having a plan to really deal with the problem. And, I think that'd be a good segue into just talking a little bit about StormForge and what StormForge does. So if you could tell us about how StormForge is different from, let's say, a monitoring or observability tool that just gives you information. What are some ways that StormForge does more than just give you information? What are some examples of the actionable steps that StormForge gives you?
Yeah. So, I mean, at our core, StormForge is really about making Kubernetes applications work better, right? That's really our mission, is to make apps run more efficiently. And that means not only to cost less to run or use less resources to run, but it also means to perform better as well. And at heart, we're really a machine learning company. We were founded by some folks who are really, really good at machine learning. They've got like PhDs from Harvard, and they really started the company as a machine learning lab. And what they found, is they were developing software, and they were doing things like data center heating and cooling optimization and things like that. And they were porting their software from Docker Swarm to Kubernetes, and they realized that there was a big opportunity here, because they were trying to configure the Kubernetes environment, and they realized there was no easy way to do this, and they were guessing at what the best way to do this was. And so they realized that the machine learning that we had been developing could really be used to solve this exact type of problem and to do it really well. So ever since then, we've been really laser focused on solving this problem of Kubernetes efficiency, Kubernetes optimization. And what we do with our machine learning, there's a couple of different approaches that we take. So one is based on experimentation. When you run in a non-production environment, you can experiment, you can try things, you can run different scenarios. And we do that using load testing. We have our own load testing tool, or we can leverage other load testing tools as well. But what we do is we run experiments in a non-production environment. Our machine learning, every iteration, every time we run the application and put load on it, our machine learning learns more about the way that application performs and all the different parameters that you can set. And after a number of iterations, it's able to come back and recommend the best way to deploy the app. And when I say recommending the best way to deploy the app, I mean, what CPU requests and limits should you set? What memory requests and limits you should set? How many replicas? What should your application specific settings be? Your heap size, and there's 100 other settings. So we can come back and tell you the best way to deploy the app. And then the second approach that we have is, once you're running the app in production, obviously things are changing, usage is fluctuating, you're adding and removing resources, you may be auto scaling. We, at that point, look at the observability data that you're already generating. So you're monitoring with a Datadog or another tool like that, and our machine learning is able to look at that data and make predictions on what's actually happening in production, so that we can adjust the resourcing and keep things running efficiently. So we'll adjust the CPU and the memory settings, and we could do that automatically, so that while your app is running in production, it will always be running at the peak level of efficiency that you can possibly hope for.
Wow, interesting. And are these two separate products? What are they called? Or are they just combined into just one product?
Yeah, so one platform called StormForge, but the two solutions, one is called StormForge Optimize Pro, and that's the one that works in a non-production environment, because really that gives you a lot of flexibility. You can optimize for any variable that you can measure. You can look at multiple different parameters. So it's a very powerful tool to kind of analyze and really understand your application, the way that it runs, the way that it performs. And then Optimize Live is the solution that runs in a production environment, looking at your observability data. So you can buy each one individually, or you can use them both together. I mean, the most powerful thing to do is to use it in a non-production environment before you deploy your application, and then after you deploy your application, keep it running smoothly with Optimize Live.
Okay, got it. Wow, interesting. And so Optimize Pro, how does it work when it comes to, for example, load testing and experiments like that? Is it actually spinning up those resources to run those tests, or are these simulated in simulated environments? How does it work?
Yeah, so it's actually running the application in the user's environment, in their
Okay,
non-prod environment. And the
okay.
way that it works is we have a process, we call it rapid experimentation. So
Mm-hmm.
it's completely automated. You basically set up your experiment, you create your load test, and then you kick off your experiment. And what happens during that process is our controller basically starts the application, it runs the load test to apply load to it, it measures the outcomes, and then it analyzes and comes back with a new set of configuration settings to try. And it'll do that however many times you set up your experiment. Could be 100 times, could be 200 times, really depending on how complicated the application is. But in either case, you can kind of start it, you can walk away, come back a couple hours later or the next morning or whatever it is, and it will come back and show you all of the different trials that it ran as part of the experiment, and it will show you the trials that resulted in the optimal outcomes. And that could be cost or performance. A lot of times what we see is that organizations are looking for the best trade-off between cost and performance, because it's not one or the other, right? It's not that you're just optimizing for cost or
Yeah.
just for performance. It's that you want the lowest possible cost for a given level of performance of the application. And so we show that to you on a chart that you can manipulate and analyze, and basically allow you to see what are the best ways to configure the application, and then basically create your manifest to deploy your application using those settings.
All right. Wow. Yeah, talking about performance versus cost, I saw on your website there's a really bold 30% guarantee where StormForge will reduce your cloud spend by 30%, is what I understand. Um, yeah, if you can tell us a bit more about that claim, because it's definitely a very bold claim that you make on the website. How does this, how are you so confident about this?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. I mean, we had worked with a lot of customers, and to be honest, we had never seen a customer that wasn't able to achieve at least a 30% savings using the StormForge Optimized Pro solution. And so we kind of came back and said, our CEO, Matt Provo, he really wanted to, put his money where his mouth was on this guarantee. And so he basically said, look, I'll pay your cloud bill, or the difference in your cloud bill, if we're not able to reduce it by at least 30%. And we've never had to pay on that promise yet, because
Wow.
we are very
Okay.
confident in the ability to do that, because there's always opportunity for savings. And we do a survey every year of organizations and kind of their perceptions on their cloud waste, and especially Kubernetes related cloud waste. And one of the questions we ask them is, if you just had to estimate, what percentage of your cloud spend do you think is wasted or over provisioned? And the average came back as 47% in the most recent survey that we did. And um, I would posit that that is probably an underestimate in most cases. So that's what people think intuitively, but the real number is probably even higher than that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we had your CTO, Patrick Bergstrom, just a few weeks back talk about how, you could be overspending by as much as 80 to 90% in some cases on
Yeah.
Kubernetes. That's a scary number. But yeah, really fascinating that, a 30% guarantee on, your cloud spend. So, anyone who's watching this, just think about if your organization's last month's cloud bill, what it was, just think about that number. And if you want like a 30% discount coupon guaranteed, just head over to StormForge and try them out. They have a 30% guaranteed reduction in your cloud bill. I think that's really bold. That's really unique. And I've not seen anything like that among the other vendors in the space. So a really cool guarantee there. Um, so I want to come back to talking about cost versus performance. Um, you know, uh, I also, was thinking about how organizations have SLAs, SLOs, KPIs that they're trying to meet. And does StormForge actually help with tracking, and making sure that organizations can hit those performance numbers? Is there any way to do that in the StormForge platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're not, we're not in the business of tracking or reporting on those numbers. So a lot of
Okay.
observability tools, that's what they do. But what we do well is really help you manage, the trade-off of cost and performance. And so what you can do when you create an experiment with StormForge, if you have, particular SLO, for example, that you want to meet, you can, kind of set that within your parameters or your boundaries within the StormForge solution. You can say, look, I never want to look at any configuration that will result in performance that is less than or worse than this particular threshold, right? And then that will kind of constrain our machine learning to only look at solutions that are going to meet your particular targets for SLOs. And then what we show you back then is the way to meet those SLOs with the lowest possible cost, right? And the least number of resources that you need to allocate. So it's one of the things that really sets us apart is the ability to look at both cost and performance. There are a lot of solutions out there that give you kind of visibility into cost. There's a lot of solutions that give you visibility into performance, but there's nobody else that really is able to kind of analyze both of those things together and the trade-offs and really give you the best possible trade-off between those things.
All right. And related to that, I wanted to know as well, what's the typical user of StormForge? Is it the developer? Is it the ops, the ops person, the platform manager? Is it also a business stakeholder who's kind of setting those SLOs and stuff like that? Or is it a combination of them? What's the typical user like?
Yeah, it's a great question because there really are kind of a broad set of teams and individuals across the enterprise that get value from a solution like StormForge. So one thing, the software engineers themselves, right, they want to be spending their time actually developing innovation and doing kind of cool stuff that's going to help propel their company forward and give their company a competitive advantage. They don't want to spend time tuning or tweaking their Kubernetes settings. That's really not what they signed up for. And so that's one audience that really benefits from the ability to be able to automate that and eliminate the guesswork and really take them out of that business of, having to figure out the best Kubernetes settings. On top of that, we see platform engineering teams, that's a growing area. And the value that they get out of a solution like StormForge is that they're able to equip their engineering teams to make smart decisions for the business without having to put a lot of effort. And for them, their goal really is to empower their engineering teams. And so StormForge gives them the ability to do that in a very easy way, a very automated way, so that their engineers don't have to spend all that time doing that. And then on the other side, we've got, kind of on the operations side, the cloud ops teams and the SRE teams, really helping them, get out of the business of having to figure out what those settings should be and kind of keeping the applications tuned once they're in production as well. And then finally, I would say FinOps is another growing area. It's a fairly new discipline, but it's becoming kind of the area where all these things come together. Because FinOps organizations or like Cloud Center of Excellence organizations, they have oversight over, all of the cloud spend in the organization, and they're trying to control that and manage it, and also give the engineers who are making those resource decisions at that level, they want to give them the tools and the ability to make smart decisions for the business and make sure that they're being fiscally responsible. So it's really, we've seen interest and we've seen customers across all those areas really be interested in the StormForge solution.
All right. Wow, that's cool. And I also noticed one more interesting thing when I was just looking through your website, which is there seems to be a focus on Java applications. And I kind of have a guess why, but I just want to hear from you as well, why this focus on Java, and is there some feature that StormForge has that, is even more powerful when used with a Java stack, or if you can talk more on those lines?
Yeah, sure. The focus on Java, anybody who has, been a Java developer knows that tuning a Java app is not easy. There's a lot of different parameters, a lot of different flags to set. And when you move that to a Kubernetes environment, it becomes multiplied, right? Because you're breaking everything up into smaller pieces and running inside of containers. And now you've also got Kubernetes settings that you have to make. So there's hundreds of flags that you can set, and any one of those flags may affect not only the performance of your Java app, but also the cost of running that Java app. And so it's a very complicated, difficult thing. Java is also known to have, slow startup times, and that can be a big factor, especially when you're auto scaling. So if you're scaling out your environment and adding a new pod, there may be a lag there between the time that the pod spins up and the application actually starts running. And so there's a lot of complexity that goes into that. And especially StormForge Optimized Pro is really well suited to help developers really analyze what's going on in their Java apps, understand the startup times better, understand which parameters, which flags are going to have an impact on the cost and the performance of the application, and really just allowing them to explore their entire, Java application and really make smart architectural decisions that will result in an optimal and efficiently running application.
Mm-hmm. And really, it's the enterprises who are the big runners of Java applications, right? So in that sense as well, there's just a lot of optimization to be done in that space. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. And the enterprise, we primarily target the enterprise, not just because of the Java use case, but in general, at the larger enterprise level, that's where most organizations are starting to see the pain points that we talked about earlier in the call, where they're scaling up for that kind of day two operations environment, where they really have to think about, cloud costs, application performance, reliability. All of those things become a much bigger factor at that point for those organizations.
Mm. And one of the other things that we notice also with enterprises is that they have hybrid setups where they also have a bunch of stuff running on premise. And so, does StormForge, help in any way with optimizing on-premise infrastructure and spend there, or is it purely focused on cloud native?
Yeah, we essentially help anywhere where you're running Kubernetes. So any
Okay.
Kubernetes distribution we can work with, and we are limited to Kubernetes at this point because we made a decision that was where kind of the biggest pain points were. But whether you're running Kubernetes through one of the major cloud providers or whether you're running it in your data center on bare metal, it doesn't matter to us. We essentially can help you optimize that application.
Yeah, I think only Kubernetes is no longer a limitation. You pretty much covered the whole space with just that. So yeah, that's pretty cool as well. Um, so yeah, I think we're almost done with all of the questions that we had planned. Lastly, if you could just talk a bit about pricing for StormForge, how it works and how it scales with usage, that would be great.
Yeah, we're basically priced by core. So wherever you're using it to optimize an application, we're basically pricing it based on the number of cores that application is running on. And in a lot of ways, we're actually we're helping you reduce the number of cores that you're running on. So in some ways, you're buying StormForge, and by the way, we're completely SaaS-based, subscription oriented. But essentially, we're helping you reduce the number of cores that you're going to need to run on. And so optimally, your price of using the StormForge solution goes down over time, or as we prefer, you would broaden your use of StormForge to other applications within your environment. So we try to price it based on the value that organizations are getting, and try to make that pricing match as closely as possible, where the value actually comes into play.
Mm-hmm. All right, really neat. So yeah, viewers, thank you so much for joining. And if you found this discussion interesting, I want to encourage you to also check out our other conversation with Patrick Bergstrom, who's the CTO of StormForge, and he dives into detail of just how things work with StormForge technically. So if you find this interesting, you'll want to check that out as well. So definitely head over to amazic.com for that. But before we go, Rich, just have a couple of questions to kind of get to know you better. So yeah, here goes. What's the alternate career for you, if not for your job in tech?
Oh boy, it's a good question. So, well, I have a little bit of a side gig right now that I do with my wife. We actually we launched a true crime podcast about a month ago because we've always had this interest in true crime, and it's always been, even since I was a kid, I was very interested in reading like mystery books and things like that. And I wanted to be a detective in the worst way, because I thought I really loved, like, piecing together clues and trying to use logic to try to solve a problem and things like that. So I think yeah, an alternate career for me would probably be a detective, homicide detective, or a private investigator, or something along those lines.
Wow. So what do you talk about on your podcast?
Yeah, well, our thing is that we look at crimes that have happened between married couples. So we're a happily married couple, and we're talking about not so happily married couples. And so each episode we talk about a different crime, usually a murder of some sort, and we kind of dissect the case and kind of walk through it. And we try to have some fun along the way, but we also try to be respectful of the victims. But at the end of the day, we're trying to tell a story, and trying to do something that people find interesting and entertaining. So we just kind of started this about a month ago, but it's been a fun little side project.
Mm-hmm. Are there any solved cases already?
Yeah, I mean, most of the cases we're doing are either solved or maybe kind of open in some ways, but we're probably not going to solve any cases on our own. But we're really more telling the story about the case.
Okay, true crime, right?
Yeah.
All right, I'll go check that out. One work tool you can't live without.
Oh gosh, I'll go a little old school on this one and say it's my whiteboard. I have a whiteboard over here on the wall, and every time I have a home office that I set up when we move to a new house, that's kind of a requirement for me, is that I have to have a whiteboard there, because it really helps just to brainstorm, or to come up with ideas, or to sketch out slides or things like that. So sometimes I just use it as a to-do list, but other times if I'm creating a presentation or some type of content, I'll use the whiteboard to try to put together ideas. And I think there's a lot of software, obviously, but there's no substitute for just getting up and drawing on a board.
Yeah, I think it's the fastest way to really sort out ideas. One tech company whose marketing you're a fan of.
Gosh, there's a lot. I mean, when I look at, when I think of marketing for a tech company, what I think is important is really helping to educate the market, and really it's not about selling or promoting. It's really about providing content that has value, a lot like what you guys are doing at Amazic, right? You put out a lot of great content to help educate the market. And there's a few examples that I see of that I really love. So AWS they have a YouTube channel. It's called Containers from the Couch, and they have these guys that talk about Kubernetes and related topics, and they do it in a way that's very understandable. There's one guy in particular, his name's Justin Garrison, and he does these videos where he uses like buckets of water and rocks and marbles to explain very basic Kubernetes concepts, but it's done in a way that's very entertaining, educational as well. So I think they do a great job at that. Our partner Datadog, they do every year they do their state of container report, that they look at all the data from all their customers and basically come back with some interesting insights about how their customers are using cloud native technologies. So there's a lot of examples like that, but I really appreciate when tech companies are going beyond just marketing and really, helping to educate their customer base.
All right. Wow, those are some really interesting ones you brought up. The containers from the couch. I really want to go and check that out. The last thing you Googled.
I honestly, I think it was the Datadog container report, because their new report is supposed to be out any day now, and we referenced that report a lot because there's some really good data in there, and I was just looking for that earlier today, so just anxiously waiting for the new report to come out.
Refreshing your browser every now and then. Well, my last question was going to be your favorite source for tech news and happening and stuff, what's happening and stuff. But then you already gave us a bunch of, sources. But if you want to add anything to that, feel free.
Well, I think, for me, the most important thing when looking for sources of technology information is to kind of try to keep my ear to the ground, and by that I mean actually, tuning into the places that actual practitioners are having conversations about things, not just vendors. And so, Reddit is a really good source for that, where people are actually having, dialogue about what's working, what's not working. Twitter is good for that as well. There's some newsletters. There's a guy, I really don't know anything about this guy other than that he's a platform engineer based in the UK, but he does a weekly newsletter. I think it's called the Infra Weekly. And he basically just, puts out a lot of different things that he's seeing or reading about that are interesting. And so, when you find information that's coming directly from people in the market that are actual users of these technologies, I think that's really the most valuable source of that type of information.
Wow, that's great. So many things to subscribe to just listening to you, right now. Yeah, thanks so much, Rich. It was really fun talking to you. How do our viewers connect with you online? Where do they find you?
Probably the easiest way is on LinkedIn. Just search for Rich Bentley at StormForge. I'm there on LinkedIn or on Twitter as well. Or, folks can go to our website, stormforge.io. And at our website, you can, sign up for a trial version, a demo, whatever you want. We've got a lot of resources there to help out as well. But really, any of those avenues are great as a next step.
All right, viewers. So with that, we come to the end of this podcast. So I want to encourage you to head over to stormforge.io and definitely put them to the test with that 30% guarantee. It sounds really cool. And Rich, thank you so much again for joining us. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, thanks, Twain. I enjoyed it as well.